Good afternoon and welcome to UMACO TV. My name is Kemal Erkan. Today is September 1st. As everyone is familiar with our format, so we are going to go through some of our updates from U.S. economy, healthcare news, and global affairs. And today we don't have a guest, so Sean and we are going to be able to catch up with several different items that we already worked together, and we'll be able to give you some updates and also some other discussions related to our regular topics. So we are gonna start with our guests. In the last several weeks, we had so many different guests who are running for offices, and we have some of them who are going to be in the show before end of the year. So our plan is to have everyone done as the first round, and then in 2024 we can actually bring them back again. So based on what we have discussed and who we had, so we have our own kind of like views in each candidate. So and then sometimes Sean and we may be on a different page in terms of what our opinions are. So I thought it would be kind of to kind of go through these individuals. So right now for the U.S. Senate, we have 3 people running. Well, from the Democrat side, Lisa Rochester is actually is the candidate, and from the Congress, we have Sarah McBride, Colleen Davis, Eugene Young, and there's Alex Geese, I believe. So we were not able to reach out to him. And from the governor race, we have Matt Meyer and also our Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall, who are running from the Democrat side. Now, Sean, we can start with you, and like just to kind of maybe just a refresher. So then, from the issues that we focus on, most important topics from the economy, healthcare, education, crime, energy and climate crisis, housing, infrastructure, immigration, and corporate and social justice. These 9 topics are part of our focus, and we had some of these guys already. So, what is your take?
Yeah, as you said, just for everybody. I am back now. It was a pleasure to have these guests on the last few weeks. I think it's very beneficial, obviously, for our show, but also, the communities and who the people are who are actually running for these positions. I feel like a lot of the time with elections, people might just end up seeing a name on a ballot like day or week of the election. You don't really get to know the candidates as intimately maybe as you'd like. And I think that's important, especially for a state like Delaware, we're a little bit smaller, so everyone is more close-knit. You do kind of want to have a full understanding of who you are supporting or maybe not supporting for a particular position. And that's kind of what we're aiming to do here by having them on the show. And yes, as you mentioned, we did try to cover the same crucial key topics for each of the candidates. However, sometimes we may not have gotten as in depth on one particular topic with a certain guest as we did with another. Also kind of had a little bit to do with their background, but I think kind of just giving you a generic overview just on what we feel is important prior to, like, before we dive into each of these topics and, who was able to cover what. I just think from the role of a leadership standpoint that these candidates have, just want to point out that what we feel, or at least me, qualities that a candidate should have, they're going to be in such a leadership position. You want to have someone who I think is not only driven, but also able to have a vision that's actually attainable. I know a lot of the times that some of these campaigns, even the presidential ones you've seen in the past, like they'll put out kind of unrealistic goals of what they're going to get done, which sometimes, such an outrageous. Right? Yeah, like they're giving you promises that just kind of aren't actually going to be fulfilled. I mean, for an example, you think about Biden, where he was going to eliminate all the student loan debt. We know that's not really realistic. It did get shot down. So this past.
Well, I mean, the problem is whether, like, regardless of it's doable or not. So, is it fair?
Well, yeah, that's
so like someone who paid, like you worked during your,
that's right,
during your school, and like if you already did that, and then someone else is going to get credit for not doing those things at the same time frame that you did in the same time frame.
Yeah.
So then, is it really fair? Right? Like,
Exactly.
why would others not pay when if most of the other people are paying?
And I
So
think,
there is that fairness issue too.
yeah, and I think as a lot of candidates probably see, you want to appeal to the most amount of people. I mean, obviously on various controversial topics, but not everyone's going to agree or want the same thing. So I think a part of what candidates do is they try to support something that appeals to the vast majority of the people. That way they have the vast majority of the people supporting them. Obviously, you know, every candidate isn't going to feel the same way on one topic. They may, you know, the vast majority might support them on 85% of the things, the other 15%, it's like, oh, you know, you're in the minority there. But yeah, just as you're mentioning, is it fair? I think that's something that these candidates should have in the back of their mind when they're running. Like I said, Delaware's a small state. Legislation that gets passed here does impact, you know, like your neighbors. It's not a giant state where, oh, that's going on, you know, 7 counties away, or we're going to put this new, you know, factory here to get job there. We're so close knit where these decisions that they ultimately make will be impacting literally your neighbors. But yeah,
no, like from the like if you were to go back to 3 candidates that we had recent ones, so Colin Davis running for Congress again, and Eugene Young also is running for Congress, right? So between the two, they were kind of, to me, like they were kind of similar in a way. The only thing was different, maybe I think Eugene is appointed by the governor for his current position.
Director of the housing authority.
And I mean, it's an appointment. I don't know if it's governor by someone else, but it's an appointed position. And Colleen actually is an elected position. She's in the elected position. But they kind of, like, to me, they look similar in terms of their experience. Like they're close in ages. They're nice people, so there's no issue. But they're going to deal with Sarah McBride.
Yeah.
So like when we look at the challenge, so Sarah was in our show 3 times before, and one of the things that we know, she's an excellent speaker. Now, one of the other things that we admire, although she may be the first transsexual, transgender state official, she never ran on that issue.
Right.
So she focused on the real issues. And she's been in this, although she's a little bit younger than these other guys, she is in the in that position in politics from her early on, like maybe she was like high teens, she was there. So it's and also her name recognition.
Yes,
like name recognition is everything. So it's sometimes good or bad. It does help you. And in her case, she's going to get national attention. So when I put Sarah on one side and look anyone else who's going to run against her, they have a big challenge to start with.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then again, we are looking for the primary, Democratic primaries. So, you know, what do you think these guys, what advantages they have over Sarah from your side?
Well, I mean, as you know, these candidates kind of have different specialties that they're obviously more just with their work, what they're kind of invested in. So like, as you're saying, with Eugene Young, with his position being director of the housing authority, obviously he would be more in tune with the housing crisis, the homeless population. I know we hit a bunch on that during his session, whereas maybe say Colleen, having her experience of being physician assistant, would be more in tune with some of the healthcare legislation that's being passed. You understand those insurance contracts, the point where we always talk about the monopoly of Christiana. Like, she'd be more, I guess, just exposed to it, given her background with her work. So I think that it's possible that these candidates could say they have more specialization maybe than Sarah, but also, as you mentioned, Sarah has kind of been right into it out of, like you said, you know, early 20s. Just already in that.
Actually, when I met her first time, she was a teenager.
Okay.
So she was in Jack Merkel's campaign in 2008. So I met her probably in 2006, 2007 timeframe.
Well, I think that also, just to touch on that, think we might get to it later in the session, but the term of like a career politician, where someone who's just involved in politics from early on and they kind of just always attain some kind of position. And I think we might touch later just about like term limits and some of the other positions in our Congress and House that where we have these candidates who are in like their late 70s, early 80s.
Retirement age.
Yeah, so I mean, we might get that later, but yeah, that might be her specialization too, where saying, you know, I've been in this since day one, I know how it works, you know, I know the ins and outs, whereas maybe, I mean, obviously they have to have political background, these other candidates, but just the time put in, obviously, I think experience, no matter what it is, the more experience you have, the better you're going to be at something. So if it's in politics.
But also, like, you know, the challenge is like people who are voting are not the same level altogether. So it's like all people, like if it's just two of us just voting, it's going to be a different election. But if everyone is voting, then like from their financial and socioeconomics and other background, you know, maybe package like baggages, I guess. So they may have different issues. They're gonna like, so you have to be able to you may be able to you need to be able to reach out to those people. So that's kind of like that being like personable is, I think it's important, or
Definitely.
being being
relatable to their
relatable, but almost like being comfortable, so then they can actually follow what you are saying is going to be important.
Yeah, I
so
think that dual, obviously it's a relationship where you're electing these people to represent you. As I mentioned earlier, we're trying to have the community get to know these candidates better, but also vice versa, like you're saying, somebody who maybe like Eugene, who, you know, from Wilmington, like he might be more in tune to, oh, the crime is obviously more important, more stressed situation up here as opposed to down at the beach, where he might not be aware of some of the issues like that urban sprawl we talked about, where like the things that are important to the people in, you know, Kent and Sussex may not be the same values as what's, you know, important or like prioritized up here in Newcastle.
So you know, as we discussed the top issues of you know, the healthcare economy, and immediately what I'm thinking is, are they really equipped to understand, and do they really have the right experience? And many of them probably are. They're going to be about the same, so they don't have like a real hardcore experience in these main topics. Social issues maybe a little bit more, but I think whoever is gonna raise more money is gonna be in the they're gonna take the advantage of the whole election process. Now, do you think like Sarah's name recognition, as I was saying earlier, is a good thing in many cases, but there's also the other side where many people are kind of now with the woke culture, where there is this kind of like
that negative
backlash, almost like there's that. Like, do you think she's going to be affected from that?
It's possible, because I know a lot of people associate like some of that type of stuff with that extreme. But as you mentioned, I think, at least from my interaction with her and just, you know, the news and what's going on, I think she's doing a good job of remaining like not tunnel vision, but like focused on what her job is. Doesn't matter the background. So I think by doing that and not getting super involved in some of like the legislation we talked about, I think it was like out in like Washington or Oregon, that one senator was trying to pass where the runaway children who were like 12 years old, who if they weren't accepted in their home, they could run away and like be taken in by the government for like a safe place or whatever. I feel like not associating, or not, I want to say associating, but not pushing that as your main goal is good by her, because yes, we know her background, but there's other issues that, you know, are going to impact a vast majority of people. More important, like the economy, it impacts everyone regardless of, you know, your religion, your race, your background. You know what I mean? Like, if the economy is up, everyone's feeling it. If the economy's down, everyone's feeling it through. Like, So
If the
there's some,
economy is not taking care of, all the other issues are going to be answered.
no one cares about
Yeah.
that. If you can't have food, you know what I mean? You're not worried about, oh, this or that.
So the way that we actually bring our candidates, so there are more actually coming, as we mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Bethany Hall, she's going to be with us. Lisa Rochester is going to be with us by the end of the year. And am I
We
missing?
also have, speaking with Michael Cat.
Oh, well, Senator McBride is going to be with us,
Senator
like from
McBride,
from this Democratic side. So we'll, once we finish that round, then we'll probably have a even better idea on some of these opinions that we have. Now we invite all the Republicans, although the response is slow. That's maybe just because it's in Delaware. So, but we are. I think it's not confirmed, but we are talking to Dr. Katz, right?
Yeah.
So he's running for the Senate or the Congress?
Yeah, US Senate. I know he was, has previous, you know, political experience, but yeah, he is now.
He was a state official,
Yes.
but he was a Republican at the state level.
Yeah.
So actually, he was my neighbor for 12 years, but we never met. So, and higher 12 years, we never saw each other. So
Never had to borrow any sugar?
none, zero. So, but I think he's going to be with us in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll bring more people. Now, Kyle Gay is running now for lieutenant governor. So we were expecting that. I did post that last night. So we'll bring lieutenant governor candidates as well. So there will be a lot of discussion with this. Now, you know, I have a little issue from last week, right? So when I make mistakes in these live events, when we have almost no rehearsal, then my people, they have a great pleasure. And then they come to my room after this and they're, oh my God, you did this, you said this. So apparently last week I made a little mistake regarding the third term in the presidential election. So there is an exception. So Roosevelt was, I believe, the one who did 3 terms in the wartime, I believe. That was probably what confused me. But thanks to that mistake, so we always take advantage of these. I want to make sure that people understand, people who are in the United States, who were born and raised here and they never left their city. So sometimes we don't understand how lucky we are. What I mean by that is the system in place in the United States is unique. So after that incident last week, so I had to go back to my history videos and just kind of like looking at all the different presidents and what they have done. But when I was going through that, from the beginning of founding, fathers of the United States, none of them did more than 2 terms, with the exception of one person. So that's unique. And not everyone understands what that means for democracy, what that means for the system, what that means for not being just going after one person or one family, and then you are just worshiping them. So that means that how strong this structure is and how well it's established since the time of like 1776. So George Washington could have done 5 more years, 5 more terms. He didn't. He did not. Like none of them did. So that's unique. Like if you look at every other country, they have same person running for 10, 12, 15, 20. I mean, you name it. So that's I want to take advantage of that mistake and just give you that update, so that's really important. So now from the one of the things that we try to do in these events is we are trying to, kind of inform everyone that what may be coming to our way. So economy is the most important thing. When we were going through and when we are going to actually have other interviews, what we see is older people, elderlies who are picking up part-time jobs. So homeless people or people who have a lot of financial difficulties. We actually see more and more of these. Now, Sean, you sent me something yesterday regarding the housing prices in the last several years, and this is one of the highest. And that actually is a huge, it went up by 3 times in 20 years, is that?
Yeah, it's right now housing is the least affordable it's ever been in terms of either buying or renting.
And available to it too. So it's if as these are affecting everyone, we are in healthcare, we're a healthcare provider, so it's affecting us. I employ 2 social workers under United Medical. Why? Is because when we are providing services from the primary care and the specialties from the like the cardiologists or the endocrinologists, bariatric surgeons, we now have to have 2 social workers to address issues in social determinant of health. Why? Is because more people are having more issues. So when you look at it topic by topic, some people are having difficulty. Why are we talking about this or that? But that's because it always comes down to the bottom line. So when it was 14 or 15 months ago when we actually opened up the global currency as a topic, many people were kind of asking me, like, why are we even talking about global currency? And my goal and our goal was, we do because these things are where we have really good advantages. Like when we are in power and when we have good advantages, then we still have to be really careful because nothing is forever. If you make mistakes, things may not stay the same. So when the US dollar is the global currency, then it gives us a great power and great advantages that many other countries don't. So then how we use that, the Spider-Man quote that great power comes with great responsibilities, and it does. So you have to really watch out and be careful with what you do. If you have the power, are you using your power out of proportion against other countries? Are you fairly treating them? And with that, as we were talking about that, the Brics came out, right? So, at least it was more known to
I think the earlier
everyone. Yeah,
2001 maybe, then around 2010 is when it started becoming more recognized as legit, and then most recently, like 2020, is when I think it started taking more serious strides. But yeah.
So now, when we say Brics, many people may be like, what are we talking about? And then they may not be watching the older episodes. But the Brics is already an alternative. It's becoming a strong alternative to US dollar. So this means certain things that we were able to do in the United States, and we were not really maybe responsible for the consequences. Now, there's an alternative, and it's not there yet. It still has a lot of time, but it will be there. So, and it's getting stronger and stronger. And so if we kind of refresh on this, there were 5 countries in the beginning, right?
But yeah, so you had Brazil, Russia, India, and South Africa, but also China. It's going to be your 5th in there. So, and
then now there are new countries accepted to the group.
Correct. Yeah. So most recently, I think in their summit, it was the end of August, the 22nd to the 24th. After that summit, I think there was at least 8 other countries had expressed interest, if not had applied. And of those, there was 4, which I believe it was like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Argentina,
and South Africa, right?
Well, South Africa was already on. Yeah, I think it was the UAE might have been the other.
UAE is you're correct. It is. So now, especially in these countries, the one of the big power that they have is the control of oil and oil production. And when you are the global currency, most of the money is being spent on energy, weapons, energy, and stuff. And so, if we lose our advantage on the global currency side, that means there is more financial impact on us in the United States.
Yeah. I just think, just to give other people background too, of why it's concerning with these particular ones is, from my research, understanding there are other little, like, I guess you could say conglomerates or whatever between countries, but not that this is significantly different from those in the way it's set up. But the reason this one is concerning is if you're looking at Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, if you're looking at the land that they make up, and obviously looking at Russia having surface area, if you combine them all, it's over 26% of the world, the world's surface. So surface area, then also population wise, you're looking at China and India being the two most populated countries. So that's a plus and a minus on their end, because with that super high population, there is also a lot of poverty. So if you look at, especially in India, with that class system, there is a lot, the vast majority of their population does live in poverty. And I think we even had videos on that like months ago where we're looking at the living, but that's kind of why it's more concerning with this particular grouping of an alternative currency, because of who the countries are in this one and the fact that others are trying to apply. Because the reason I think that most of them are doing, as you mentioned, with a great power, a great responsibility, that the US is to avoid some of the sanctions. That way they can kind of continue to operate on their own without relying or being in fear of sanctions. So just to give people an example too, obviously you probably heard more of the sanctions with the Russia with the war, and how the US was saying, about trade and all this with Russia because of what they were doing. But we don't want to be too aggressive with the sanctions. I know one of the other examples was in Ecuador. I think it was like 2018 or so. They're having a push to rely on natural breastfeeding as opposed to using that formula. And one of the companies that actually makes the baby formula is a US company. When the US found out about it, the economic impact that would have of losing all that sales, they put a sanction or threatening sanctions on Ecuador for that. So it seems almost like the US would be abusing that power. So that's kind of what's driving these countries.
Well, that's our proportion, right? So like, how are we using, and do we actually have that responsibility? Like from the from social issue standpoint. So like, actually there's one that we can also mention is the one in Uganda, right? So with their recent news, if I can find my papers, there was something happened where with the gay rights and
there was LGBTQ.
and then now we are actually going to put financial action around that. Like, why? Like, that's not our business in a way. So every culture, every country, they have their own belief system. So if the problem, and you and I, we go through this a lot in our discussions, the hypocrisy here is, right? If this is the case, then don't work with Saudi Arabia. The worst country when it comes to the human rights, worst country in the world. So they killed one of the journalists in Istanbul in their own embassy. They cut them into pieces, process them through the meat processor, and pretty much he disappeared. And this happened, and then they were caught, and we still have a really great relationship because we are able to sell stuff. So this is where the hypocrisy is. It's just like, it's not fair. So like, it's like, if you cannot just do one thing with this guy and not to do this with the other one, you cannot have double standards, and that's where we get a lot of this is maybe what's motivating organizations like Brics. Now, one of the other things that maybe the most important one is Iran. So Iran is it's a neighbor to several countries around them, but because of the issues that they have with US, those countries who are neighbors, they cannot do any trade with Iran.
Yeah.
How? How can you say you cannot do that?
Right.
And is it like number one, is it humane to do that? Because then if those just because their government officials are making bad mistakes, like just like our government officials, does it mean that everyone has to pay and everyone has to sacrifice in those countries? That's not the case. And these are your neighbors. So when it's easier to make those decisions when you are far away, but when you are so close, and in some, like when you go to the border of Turkey, I won't know the difference between this side or the other side. So like in that area, so everyone is either Turkish or Iranian. So like you are not going to be able to separate. So when you are so connected, can you really put these sanctions on countries? And if you do, what may be happening? That's where we started discussing, why we started discussing this issue. Right. And today, this issue is actually gaining more momentum, and it's not surprising. At least it's not surprising to us, but I know it will be shocking for many people because they're not following some of these things.
Yeah, like again, being a superpower or one of the superpowers, as the U.S. Obviously, all eyes are always on us. That target is on the back. Like you're saying, is the responsibility where it's everyone always turns, I feel like, to the US to say, oh, what's their stance on the situation? Then we'll decide, like, until the US commits to something, we're not going to. So you're kind of walking a delicate line there, like you're saying with those sanctions, where is it fair to be punishing just based on, geographic location? No, you happen to have to share a border. Well, now you can't trade with your, bordering country because we don't like what they're doing. So you have to now also indirectly suffer. So like you're saying,
because it's not just the money anymore because you own the system. So
what you say goes type of thing.
Like like the banking system, you are actually you are making someone handicapped. So you are pretty much if you don't have any cash today, like not like just at this moment, and if you really need something, and then there's
barter, I got a couple of things.
If there's no one is giving you what you need unless you have cash, but you may have so many different credit cards, it's not going to work, right? So that system is being used, and that's wrong. And when we always, at least when I being in the healthcare industry, everyone knows that we work with Dr. Erkan very closely. So, and we had several different issues with hospital systems, and this always gives me this analogy of what hospitals are doing to private practices. So, and how they were hiring physicians with higher salaries, employees with higher salaries because they're nonprofit and they get paid more. So then every time there is an issue at the global level, it's always kind of like, it's so easy for me to kind of connect those issues with day-to-day issues that we are having. One of the reasons that we have a surgery center who is one of the greatest in the United States in bariatric surgery is thanks to Christiana Hospital. If they didn't mistreated us, we would not actually go really hard on the surgery center project, because we will still be part of their system by as of today.
You have a natural competition.
Exactly. So that's why these are not just because they're at the global level doesn't mean that we are not able to relate to those, because it's just happening every day in our lives. Speaking of our lives, do you want to go to Africa?
Do I want to go to Africa physically or topic-wise?
Topic-wise.
We'll start with
well, physically, actually, it's one of safari would be one of my dream vacations. Yeah,
all right.
I have to do that at some point. But now it's just a topic-wise. Let's go into Africa. So, what's happening in Africa these days?
Yeah. So another thing, obviously, we keep track of the global conflict tracker. I think it's also related to Reuters, which is one of our main sources we use. But at least in the country of Niger, I know there was a little bit of uprising with the French and the military regime there is trying to get the French ambassador out of there. So there's just unrest there. There are other ongoing things too in Africa. If you look at the conflict tracker, there's multiple dots, all across. But now you're seeing, I think there's that division between, the West Africa and East Africa on what those conflicts and like.
I guess one of the reasons that we want to talk about Africa right now is, again, part of what we did from the beginning, since you started, we have these, just like the global currency, we brought global affairs. And one thing that I was trying to point out is there are issues today that started with different parts of the world. So I don't know if we would be in trouble by saying this, but since the new Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, is in charge, there are more troubles around the world. So this is not limited to, what happened in Ethiopia with Tigray. This is Sudan and Egypt, and then it followed with Ukraine. And Taiwan is the next. And then in the meantime, we have seen stuff in the South America. But now the West Africa is getting really heated, and there are a lot of coup attempts, and the countries are trying to get together to kick the French out from their countries, which is it's going to be a tough task. But stuff are happening right now in Africa, and I think every time there are more trouble, anyone who's actually watching the US debt, the national debt, that number is now close to 33 trillion. And it's affecting us in different ways. So that's why we kind of wanted to actually bring up that issue. It's almost out of control.
And also just add on that, with those countries who applied to be in the Brics, there was more than half, I think, were African countries. Because as you know, South Africa was one of the initial ones. But in that since the recent summit, there's, at least like 5 or 6 other ones that are in Africa who applied for membership in Brics.
And I think there will be more. So one of the really important elements in the dynamics of Africa is China. China is the biggest investor.
Yes.
Many people don't understand this, but somehow China became the biggest investor in most African countries, and the gap is so big between China and the next country. So it's going to be a difficult gap to close. The only way that you can close it by having these types of regional trouble, because then that's not stable anymore. So then you are able to break in. And the thing is, we are all kind of seeing this, and we are part of it. So we don't want to pay the consequences. So because economically, every American today is, I wasn't sure if I was intelligent, where my house is. So close to the school system, that I forgot the name now, so that's great. Tower Hill. So it's one of the probably most expensive private schools in the United States at the high school and entry level. And there is a bus stop, and no one uses it. Last night I was walking Joshua, and there was a homeless guy sleeping inside. So if you remember, I mentioned something on Route 40 here, but 2 places is a little bit different in terms of the demographics. So I didn't know that we had any homeless people around us, but now the guy is actually sleeping in the bus stop. So that's not just an exception, because I was telling, if you remember, Matt Meyer, how many homeless people at the ramp of exit 7, right, going into the city, and our office being there. And, I didn't actually see the guy. It was Joshua noticed him first. because every time there's something different, he pays attention. I'm like, I thought there was someone hiding or something. The guy was just sleeping. So while that's not a choice, that's just because he's desperate. But there are more and more that we see, and when these things are happening, and if it's out of control, because I would say, if I have to compare the good times of Trump, we didn't have any global negative, in a negative way. We didn't have any global affairs with any global trouble. We didn't start any global conflict with any of the countries.
Yeah,
so
numerous now.
Now there are so many of them, and then you see the economy that time versus this time, and working on the democratic side of the state, me personally, and knowing that there are so many issues are not handled correctly at the president's level, it's scary. It's tough. So again, like someone needs to kind of like people need to ask themselves, just like the way that we prep for these events. So look what conflicts that we had between 2016 and 2020. None. In fact, we were bringing troops back, then focusing on here. And the economy was great.
Yeah, I think one of the first ones I remember is that like sudden withdrawal from Afghanistan that Biden ordered to, and that was like an embarrassment for.
So then, but now it's all banks. Like we are all like every place, every region has a conflict. That's we are part of. Like right now, we are in a war. Like no one maybe understand that, but we are in a war. Today, United States in a war with whoever, like it's Russia, China, this or that, but we are, right? So, and then we are paying the cost economically.
So it's nuts the amount that has been given to Ukraine, especially as you're saying, like if there's things around here, you'd expect the US to prioritize its own people versus, but again, that's the political for you. So,
anything you would like to add?
In general, I think I've been saying it for a while, but if you're obviously the economy is not doing too hot, and I think that you want to be more conservative and cautious and like prepare for it to get potentially even worse. So I just think from a financial standpoint that everyday people, your everyday average Joe versus anyone, if you are comfortable now.
So we agree on not to getting any advice from an average Joe, right?
Yes.
Because average Joe is average. So we're going to get the advice from the most qualified person. And nothing against average Joe, whoever's the average Joe is.
No, but I'm just saying like people who maybe don't follow like the way we do versus someone who is in tune and is aware what's going on. Like I think you'd rather be prepared and then have it not happen versus not being prepared and have it happen. So that would be my one input.
So it's going to be an interesting time between now and November 2024 because surprisingly everything. There was a time that I used to think that the state officials they didn't matter that much for our day-to-day stuff. That's not true. They're policymakers. So if you remember the conversation we had, it was I believe with Eugene, where I was explaining how the state has this. There was a new bill that supports the primary care practices, but only for the fully insured patients. And the fully insured patients are like 17% or maybe less. And they didn't know that, but they made that decision.
Yeah.
So that's why part of the issue is why we are trying to do what we do here. We want to make sure that we are able to voice out our opinion in the right way. So then before these policies are being made, then we can actually participate and then put our opinion into those. So because if I knew that this was happening, like if we were paying attention to these bills in the beginning, I would probably pick that up quicker because what we know is biggest insurance companies, commercial insurance companies that you have today, they are not an insurance company. They're only 20-25% of their population is fully insured. The rest of their job, the rest of their service line is third-party administration, which is administrating self-funded plans. And that's not an insurance business. That's just like you are almost like, I used to call them reverse billing company. So they charge on your expenses. So like, let's say state of Delaware is a self-funded, but it needs a network and it uses, let's say, Aetna or Highmark. So then we think that patients have Highmark or Aetna, but they don't. So they are actually self-funded. So that's 75% of their business. So every time you make a new policy, and then if you say fully risk patients, then we are not talking about 100%. We are talking about less than 25%. So same thing with the prior authorization bill. Well, you came up with an idea, fine, but then do you know what prior authorization is from day to day, from the PCP standpoint or from the specialist standpoint? I'm not asking you, but the guy who was part of our show, and then they didn't see what was going to happen. Same thing with the fee schedule for primary care, and they said again, commercial, fully insured. So then, like if it's an employer plan, then they don't have to pay the same. Well, that leaves 75-80% of the business out. So this is why it's kind of like important from who actually represents us, and do they have it? And look, I mean, they don't have to really have perfect understanding of it, but they have to be willing to listen and try to understand. Learn and try to understand, exactly. And that's the piece that we are trying to do. Therefore, the election 2024 is going to be our focus, and many other people are going to come. We really want a couple of the presidential candidates. One of them has, like, now he's too popular, I guess, Vivek. There was a confirmation, but
with the media team, but
we'll still go after him. So we'll bring more people, and in the meantime, we'll continue our clinical presentations as well. I
think next week is the
wellness webinar with Donna Gunkel and Caroline Weber. So we'll be back, and then today we have our Bariatric Friday, and Dr. Erkan and I are going to discuss resolution of comorbidities after bariatric surgery. So thank you for being with us.